Good morning and welcome to episode 3 of season 2. Today we are doing Cinchy office hours. This is your opportunity to ask questions. We will be recording this episode and sharing it on Cinchy TV, as well as sending it out via email for you to share with your peers. You'll find a solid collection of learning videos on Cinchy TV. We have all the learning series there, as well as training videos and key insights. We encourage you to take advantage of the content on Cinchy TV to grow your knowledge on data centricity, as well as share it out to your community so you all grow together. Our speakers today are the co-founders of Cinchy. Dan DeMers is our CEO, and Karanjot Jaswal is our CTO. Here's how the session today will work. We have a collection of pre-submitted questions to start with. I'll also monitor the chat box for your questions. Alternatively, you can raise your hand by going to the participants section on Zoom, and there you'll see an icon that just says raise your hand. When I see your name, I will pause and then I'll call your name and you can unmute your mic and ask your question directly to Dan and to Karan. Thanks so much for attending our office hours. Now, let's move to our first pre-submitted question. This one is for Karan. How is Cinchy different from data virtualization and a data lake?
Perfect. So you've asked about two different platforms. I'll actually break that question up into two parts. So let's start off with a data lake. So a data lake, if you read the textbook definition of it, essentially what it is a platform that's able to manage raw copies of data from operational systems and enable analytical capabilities on top of that. So against the traditional sort of ETL approach, a data lake would provide you with ELT, where you can bring the data in its raw form in, and now it gives you the computational power in order to transform that later on as you need to in order to solve the business problems or answer business questions that you may have. Now, what that's essentially doing, though, if you look at the overall architecture and in the organization, it's adding a new system, which is bringing in copies of that information. It's not actually addressing any of the silos that already exist inside of the organization, nor is it reducing the amount of integration points that you have. In fact, it's actually adding another integration point. So what Cinchy does, on the other hand, it's really changing how you deliver technology solutions. A data lake is not doing that. With a data lake, if you have a new operational capability that you need to stand up, let's say you want to build out a new CRM system, you're not going to do that against your data lake. Instead, you're going to just take the data from that CRM system and you're going to feed it down in order to enable whether it's advanced analytics or machine learning type capabilities. With Cinchy, it's actually changing how you deliver technology solutions and providing you a platform that provides acceleration in delivering those net new technology solutions, and doing so in such a way where the actual integration points are being reduced. So the overall number of integrations is coming down as a result of applying our technology to your business problems, especially as you add more and more solutions onto the one common data fabric. So that's the data lake. And then when you look at data virtualization, similarly, data virtualization also has no kind of impact on the existing silos in the organization. What it's doing is providing a platform that allows you to run a distributed query against your existing data while leaving that data in place. So your operational systems, if you have to build a net new solution or a new business capability, you're standing up a new app, creating yet another silo. And this data virtualization platform is just allowing you to run a query now that includes that data for the purposes of reporting and or analytics. And so again, similarly, if you contrast that with Cinchy, Cinchy is about actually targeting the root cause of that fragmentation and about providing you with a platform that changes how those systems are built to begin with.
Thanks very much, Karan. Dan, this question will be for you. How does Cinchy compare with other data fabrics on the market?
So there are many different differentiators there, but I think the main one is the idea of data being born on a fabric, which is what we call autonomous data that is essentially born free. And so like if you follow the rapidly emerging by the book definition of what is a data fabric or what is a data mesh, it's very much what I would summarize as the maturation of what Karan described as data virtualization. It's a facade that sits on top of your fragmented data to create the experience as if it were connected, with the nuance being that there is caching such that it's now suitable for use in operational use cases. Where Cinchy goes beyond that is often when you're providing that consolidated view of that data, you need to create new data. Data is not finite, whether it's a new attribute or a new entity. When you're creating experiences, that is the phenomena that traditionally you fall back to an app-centric approach to creating an app for that. So the ability to store data and originate data directly on the fabric, such that as you're building new systems, you're using the Cinchy fabric as your system of origination for the data, ultimately leads to the eventual elimination of integration as even a concept. That's what I would say is the main differentiator. But I actually have, let me just go to a slide that will kind of summarize that. So what this is really illustrating is the difference between Cinchy as a data-centric collaborative intelligence platform versus a traditional data fabric. So what I was talking about is the elimination of new data silos for autonomous data, the reduction of development effort when creating new operational systems, as well as the business-friendly end-user interface, what we call the data browser, is what I would say is the main differentiators.
Thanks very much, Dan.
Sure.
Next question will be for Karan. How is there no integration if I still have to do integration to bring the data into Cinchy?
Right. So Dan, if you go to, it's slide 9.
This one, right?
This one, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
So when you hear the no integration term, really that's the vision of Cinchy, is to reach a state where you've eliminated all integration inside of your organization. But of course, that's a journey that you have to go through. That's not going to be something that happens day one once you roll out the product. So the way that that works is that concept of autonomous data, which Dan spoke about, means the origination of net new data inside of the data fabric. And so that is data that spans now multiple business solutions, and that information is interconnected in such a way that there is no integration required between solutions that are built on top of Cinchy. And so as your organization continues to stand up new capabilities, you're evolving towards that state. Of course, during that transition, you are moving from a model where your organization probably looks very much like the left-hand side. Everything is siloed, and the integration points today are, in fact, point-to-point. Now, in the intermediate state, you're really making the transition that looks more like the middle diagram here, where your existing systems are connected in for the purposes of synchronizing that data from your source system into Cinchy, and potentially in the reverse flow as well. And now that that data exists on the platform, there's no further integration required in order to connect that with any other information that's available inside of Cinchy. And that means that now business solutions that are backed by Cinchy actually don't need to perform additional integration. And so the integration points, while they continue to exist in that intermediate state, are dramatically reduced. So in this diagram, going from the 25 to the 7. And as that process continues and you continue to leverage the platform and its capabilities for being able to manage data in an autonomous fashion, that's where the integration points continue to drop. And that's why the right-hand side takes you much closer to that vision where it's down to 2. And there is eventually, in the long term, a target state where you eliminate it altogether.
Next question is for Dan.
Yep.
While I get it, how do I convince my organization to buy into the technology? How do I convince other members of both my IT and business teams up to the executive level? What advice and help can you provide?
So that's a great question. It's a tough question. And it's also just kind of share that even as an organization that sells data center technology, we struggle with this as well. But the one maybe a lesson that I would share just from even our experience in trying to do exactly that, is don't sell the technology, is sell the organizational change. What we've learned is, if we're having a conversation with say an early prospect, is we can kind of ignore the technology for a bit and focus on the fundamental difference between an app-centric approach and a data-centric approach. And what we find is that not everyone accepts that to be the inevitable future as we think it is. But those who do, once they get over that hurdle, then the rest kind of falls into place. Now, what that means, though, is the concept of data centricity, and once you even buy into that, is, well, where do you get started? So, as Karan mentioned, it really becomes a journey from the extreme left to the extreme right. And that journey is a multi-year journey. So people tend to be afraid of investing large amounts of money in multi-year journeys, which is one of the reasons why we suggest that organizations don't invest any money in data center technology. It should save money immediately and continuously. So what that points to is really a methodology that is needed in order to facilitate that organizational change. And that honestly is a big, hairy problem. And it's, I would say, very similar to other paradigm shifts. If you go back through history, the evolution towards software as a service, where you're not running your own software on your computer, and infrastructure as a service, where you're maybe not running your own data center, you're using a data center as a service. And like all these major shifts required organizational change considerations as a part of that. So the timing of that question is actually good, because then in our next episode in 2 weeks, we're actually going to be digging into that and share some of our lessons learned and best practices for doing exactly that. But I think that's the best way to kind of educate the organization, to get them to buy into the ultimate end state. What is checkmate? What is the end game here? Data centricity. Okay. Once I buy into that, how do I make it real? Well, that's where I need the methodology. That's where I need to know that I'm going to get, I'm going to manage my risk, I'm going to get value, and I'm going to do that on a continual basis. And I would say we're learning that as an organization, but we'll share with you what we've learned thus far. But there's much to still be learned in that, because this is all still pretty new.
Great response there, Dan. Karan, this one will be for you. How is the connector framework different than ETLs or APIs? I don't understand how it's easier, better, faster. How does it work?
Right. Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is that the connector framework is really designed around connecting your existing systems into Cinchy. Right? That's its sole purpose. Whereas when you look at an ETL platform, the ETL platform is intended to be a generic tool or generic utility to move data from one location to another. And as part of that migration, be able to transform it along the way. So in the context of bringing information into our platform, this is providing the facility of synchronizing data. So it's giving you the ability to map information from your source into Cinchy, or in the reverse direction, and actually through simple configuration, manage a synchronization. And so essentially it will detect deltas, changes that have occurred, and based on that, apply those changes in either direction. And that's really the key difference between, or that's the way that our solution works. And that's what makes it incredibly easy to use in the context of looking at, let's say, the middle diagram here, taking data from that custom app on the top left and bringing that in and connecting it in. An ETL tool, again, on the other hand, you can still perform a synchronization using an ETL tool. It's just not designed to solely perform that one action. And as a result, you would have to actually design and architect that outcome. And so it's a complex operation to implement inside of an ETL tool, to be able to determine deltas across two different source systems, apply changes, and keep them in sync bidirectionally. And then on the point about the APIs, so APIs for us, for example, they act as a source. There are systems that we're able to connect to, which expose and make their data available through APIs. So similarly here, you can leverage that as a means of bringing data into the platform.
Thanks very much, Karan. Dan, here's a question. How does your licensing work?
Yeah. So the way that that we license the software is, first of all, if you understand kind of the underlying thesis of the company, and that organizations and people should ultimately have control over their data, what that points to is a model where it's not really usage based. So the way that we structure it is it's unlimited users for unlimited data to create unlimited solutions, these business capabilities that are data centric. But at the same time, we're a business and we need to make money. And the value that we ultimately offer is the ability to create these data centric solutions using the platform. So that's what we call a builder. So it's a subscription model where you're licensing named individuals to have what we consider to be a superpower of being able to build data-centric solutions. So the advantage of that model is that you can get started very, frankly, very, very cheap relative to other technologies that offer accelerated delivery of pretty complicated business solutions, but get started small and grow your builder base over time as you start to realize that value, and as you start to expand your transformation outside of your initial areas of focus. So it's a simple model where it's basically a fee based on a package of builders who can build unlimited solutions with unlimited data for unlimited end users. And one other consideration on that I think is interesting is a lot of our customers get pretty excited when they realize that they can connect the platform, which can run on-prem or in a private cloud, to existing SaaS applications, and now make that data available for their entire organization, often without any additional fees, because our model is builder-based, not usage-based, not user-based. So you can save a heck of a lot of money on whether it's API calls or end user licenses, or really the old way of thinking, which is you're being charged to interact with your very own data.
Karan, as an add-on to the previous question, what are the included connectors, and can I build my own?
Right. So the included connectors actually span all of the common protocols that you would think of and commonly used platforms, so whether that's file-based platforms and protocols or formats, and you also have the ability to connect into APIs, be them REST or SOAP calls, the ability to connect into databases via standard protocols like ODBC. The catalog itself of connectors is something that is documented on our website, and additional details are available there in terms of how to configure that. So in the documentation, there's a section that actually provides all of the connectors that we make available today, and you'll see there that it does span the things like file-based databases, APIs, as well as common platforms like commonly used CRM systems and more. When it comes to creating your own connector, so today the connector architecture is not one that's open, where you can directly build your own connectors and integrate them into the existing set that we have. Instead, the way that works, you can certainly build your own connectors. And if you have a homegrown application, one that you've created internally, it has its own protocol for how information is made available. It is just really one hop away. So taking that information and getting it into a standard format, whether that's a file-based format or being able to expose that data via an API, that is the extent of the work that you'd need to do in order to now connect that into our existing set that is available. So it is actually, it's quite simple to really connect to any system that makes data available in machine readable form.
Thanks very much. I think this would be a great question for you, Dan. What's the relationship between Cinchy and the Data Collaboration Alliance?
Sure. So the Data Collaboration Alliance is actually a not-for-profit entity that we initialized, but we see it very much as us just really bootstrapping it to get it operational. But its purpose, its reason for existing, is to drive awareness and advocacy for what we see as a critical need to introduce a zero-copy integration standard. that ultimately enables citizens and corporations to gain control over their data in a world where that control has been taken away and continues to deteriorate with data fragmentation and data being trapped behind paywalls and all this other consideration. So it's a consistent thesis of the company, but what we're doing with that is really looking for strategic partners, both individual people as well as organizations, to find opportunities to leverage the technology to help, whether it's environmental improvements or other ways that you can leverage the technology to solve real world problems, but at the same time driving awareness and advocacy for the need for this eventuality. So if anyone's interested in more information, if you go to datacollaboration.org, it talks about the organization. And the premise, again, is that the ability to own data is irrelevant if you don't have the ability to have control over the data that you own. It's kind of like if you own property, but anyone could just occupy that property and you had no ability to control that. That would, what's the point of owning something that you can't control? And that's the whole premise and the whole thesis. So if this is something that I know that a lot of people are quite passionate about this at a personal level and a corporate level, but if you're interested in learning more and signing up for training or even to volunteer your time to support some of the initiatives around intelligent communities and helping to improve the environment and other considerations using this new technological approach, or helping to drive international standards around the elimination of copies and duplication of data and the enablement of control, then definitely check it out, sign up to the newsletter. And if you're representing an organization that you think could be a good fit philosophically, then you can reach out to us via the website and we can just set up a chat and figure out how we can work together.
Excellent. And I've added that link directly into the chat.
Okay, great.
Karan, when do you start to realize value with Cinchy? Do I need to move all of my data into the fabric first?
So definitely not. So as I had mentioned earlier, it is in fact a journey to get to a stage where you've completely eliminated integration, which is essentially where you'd end up if you had gotten to the point where all of your data was on the fabric. And so we've designed the platform in such a way that you do realize value immediately. That is always our intention, is that the moment you begin to use the platform, it's helping you to accelerate the delivery of even the first business solution that you create on top of it. So Dan, if you go to, I think it's slide 12, that data-centric maturity model. That one, yeah. So this gives you a bit of an indication of it. So when you look at a traditional application, it has all of these various components. You have your UI, API, the logic layers, which are broken apart into the business logic as well as control logic. And then you have the persistence and integration. So as you look at the maturity and the evolution of that, the pieces that Cinchy is bringing to the table is, firstly, at the bottom, the elimination of integration by the introduction of the enterprise data fabric, as well as a capability that we call plasticity, that provides you with insulation from schema evolution and the ability to control changes across a set of distributed teams that are working in one common environment, but without impacting one another. So these, as you start to adopt the technology for more and more use cases, you start to see a compounding benefit with both of these at this layer. But even for your first solution that you create, you still benefit from the capability of autonomous data management. So that is the provisioning of really persistence and controls as a service. So getting those two capabilities mean that you're writing a lot less code for the first solution that you deliver by applying the technology. And there is then the top layer as well, where you can actually achieve simplification on UIs, APIs, and business logic as well by taking advantage of the configuration and out-of-the-box features and functionality that come with Cinchy, which are designed to give you a metadata-driven experience on top of the data that you are managing in an autonomous fashion.
Just one thing to add to that, Karan, is because I personally got that question a bunch of times, and it always makes me laugh a little bit because clearly if you had to move all of your data into it, you would not do that. It doesn't make any sense. But the technology doesn't guarantee that you are successful. So you do need to pair it with a methodology and an approach. So a lot of what you were describing there is actually not necessarily features and functionalities of a technology software. It's an approach. It's a way of implementing organizational change. If you think of, imagine your organization was doing nothing but waterfall-based software development. And Agile came out as a new methodology to take advantage of the evolution towards distributed systems. How do you actually do this? You have to cancel all of your waterfall projects and instantly start to adopt agility across the organization. If you did that, you would fail. What you do is you manage that as an organizational change. You have a process, you have champions, you start small and make sure that you're getting instant and continuous value, and then you rinse and repeat, and you scale that value. And if you don't get the value, you cancel it, or you refactor until you get that value before you start to scale. Same approach here. This is kind of organizational change management 101, which is very hard. The next episode we'll get into, again, I don't claim that we have all the answers, but we definitely have learned some lessons over the past few years in doing this that we'll share with you. But really, that's the way to frame it, is just think of other major changes inside of your organization, and how do you go about that? It's the same thing with data centricity.
Excellent. Dan, we've got time for just one more question here in the pre-submitted one, and I'm very, very grateful to everybody that sent their questions in advance. Where in the data fabric does one put the business logic, i.e. methods, operations, procedures, so that it can be reused along with the data?
Another good question. So and this slide actually covers that. So here we have business logic and separately control logic. Generally, when you're thinking of application architecture, these often get bundled together as business logic. The reason that in this illustration we've separated that is a lot of what someone may consider to be business logic is actually expressible as control logic to limit your ability to see or to change or to insert or to delete based on a data-driven rule. So as you think about your universe of business logic in an app of the future that you need to create, if you separate that into those two concerns, your business logic, which is actually business rules, is something that will still exist in code. It could be code that is invoked through a user-defined function inside of the fabric. It could be code that is externally hosted, that is orchestrated via the fabric, where it's providing inputs and outputs and essentially invoking that as a service. But the control logic is what you're actually implementing at the data layer directly. Which limits the ability to see or change data, not based on what is this row or just who is this user, but based on data-driven rules. So something as simple as employees can only see the salary of other employees if that other employee is themselves or someone who works directly for them or indirectly for them. That's an example of control logic that you would embed at the data layer, such that no matter how someone's going at that data, it could be over REST, could be through a report or a visualization tool, it could be through an experience, is you want that to be universally enforced, because that is actually a control. And that's what you would put at the data layer. So it's really categorizing what used to be referred to as business logic into what is actually data control logic and what is actual business rules. Business rules continue to exist largely as they did before, but the control logic, which from my own experience actually is the majority of the complexity, now gets centralized within the data.
And if you want to go deeper on that, I've just added to the chat our season 1, episode 7, which is universal controls, how data fabric creates meaningful data ownership. So you can just click on that link and be able to go directly to that. Thank you very much for attending today. We really do appreciate all of you being here. Is there any questions? I just want to pause just before I wrap it up here. Is there any questions that anyone would like to openly ask at this point? I know we had it that you could raise your hand, but just want to pause here for 1 second. There is a question here. How is this different than suggesting to rewrite all of the apps to use the domain model pattern, like a standard application framework minus its UI layers, or even like the Microsoft Common Data Service or similar offerings from Salesforce?
Karan, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Sorry, using the domain model pattern like standard application framework. So the Microsoft Common Data Model, I'm assuming that's in reference to like a Dynamics 365 platform and the model that they provide. When you're leveraging that, it's typically centered around a lot of the capabilities they're providing out of the box. So you're able to use that solution in order to take information that, again, is originating from your operational systems and bring that into their platform in order to now provide reporting capabilities on top of that, or in order to use that in context of enabling the other functionality that's part of that platform. So the reason why that exists is because that is relevant in order to provide you with, let's say, a 360 view of your customers, because it's Dynamics by its nature is a CRM system. Similarly with Salesforce, you're pushing your data to them and growing that model in order to provide you with that holistic view. Like that's generally the context in which those models are used. Now, when you look at that in contrast to Cinchy, in Cinchy, firstly, you're controlling that model, and it is not only a domain model that is defined, let's say, initially by a third party, but one that you can create, which is fit for purpose for your organization. But it's also not tightly coupled to a particular business application, right? So you're not bringing the data in solely to service the CRM capabilities or functionality that one platform is providing you. Instead, what you're doing is you're decoupling your data from your applications in order to create this data fabric that's now allowing you to build solutions on top of that. So its primary purpose is the elimination of the siloing effect that you get by having multiple different systems in the first place, and not about just adding functionality on top of one platform.
Thanks very much, Karan. So thanks everyone for attending. Next, in 2 weeks from now, we will be starting off with another great episode, and Dan's already alluded to it a couple of times here. We'll be covering off best practices for transforming your organization to data centricity. We'll have Dan and also Fatima Kaba, who is our Director of Change Management and Training here at Cinchy. And I think you'll really enjoy that session. So please click on the link that I put into the notes. You can just register ahead of time and be all ready for that. We'll also send you out an email with the information on that, so you can also attend that. Now, if you're interested in spending more time with us and want to do a deeper dive for your organization, we do have a URL that you can just go to, which is cinchy.com/dive deeper, and you'll be able to spend some time with us. You can just arrange a time that works conveniently for you and your team, and we'd be happy to spend more time with you. Thanks very much for attending today. It's great to have had all of you as part of the learning series to date, and we look forward to taking you on a journey as we provide more and more interesting content on this channel.